And now, just to give sequence to our two remote speakers of this meeting, it's a real pleasure to welcome with us Professor Fernando Quevedo, now professor at the New York University of Abu Dhabi, and also professor at Cambridge, and formerly was director of the ICTP in Trieste, an extremely important center for the promotion of physics, a UNESCO Category 1 center in Trieste, Italy, as you know. So I invited Fernando to give some perspectives on the landscape of physics in Latin America, and he'll talk to us about this landscape with respect to high energy physics, which is one of the fields in which Latin American multilateral cooperation is the most developed, not only because this field is a field where large collaborations have the primacy, but also because it's one of the fields that first emerged and developed for historical reasons in our continent and remains an extremely important field of cooperation among our countries. So thank you very much, Fernando, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luis. Congratulations first to Claf and CNPq for this agreement you signed. Thank you for the invitation to Claf, the Minister of Science in Brazil and UNESCO. It's a real honor for me to give a presentation in front of all this distinguished audience. So I will just, as Ulises mentioned, I will just present the landscape of high energy physics in Latin America, mostly developed for some actions we have been taking in the last 8 years, and starting when I was a director of ICTP, but it has been continuing over the years. And in particular, I will mention some statistical analysis that we have performed about the development of physics, of high energy physics in Latin America that can be easily extrapolated to all physics and all sciences. So before I start, I would like to say that I was very pleased listening all these presentations of the ambassadors, that there is a real commitment to support science in the region and also this vision to have a regional collaboration, which I think is fundamental for our region to develop. I'm coming from Guatemala, many of you may not know. So we are one of the small countries that need definitely to be part of a network of collaboration with other countries in Latin America, is the idea network. So we'll just start with the brief histories and then some recent developments, and then mention the Association for High Energy Physics and Astroparticle Physics that we created this year, or last year, sorry. And then the statistical analysis that will give you a perspective of what is the status at the moment of high energy physics. And I will say it will reflect essentially all physics in general and all science more or less. So I hope that you will appreciate that part, and then mention some future perspectives. So brief history, it has been mentioned several times, and so essentially we have over the record almost very few activities in Latin America in physics, and in particular Latin American physics. And well, then there were some key individuals, Watakin from Brazil, Sandoval Vallarta from Mexico, Cesar Lattes from Brazil was a very prominent from the discovery of the pion, Moshinsky in Mexico, Leite Lopez in Brazil, and Jan Biaggi in Argentina. Actually, Jan Biaggi, Leite Lopez, and Moshinsky had played an important role later on, as was mentioned, to propose the creation of Claf, which is, I think, it started in 1962, just 2 years before Salam created ICTP. So in that sense, Latin America had some leadership in that regard, some vision of collaboration on the regional level. Of course, Salam did it in Trieste to create a United Nations institution for all the world. And then the different institutions that were created, CBF, CIF. The CIF is this Inter-American Center of Physics that was created in Colombia, and plays small role of expanding what ICTP was doing globally to try to have an initiative in the region. It developed in a very limited way now, but it played a role in the history of physics in general in the region. Then someone key initiatives. The LAF, the Latin American School of Physics, again created by Mushinsky, like Lopez and Giambiaggi, now it's called the Mushinsky School of Physics. CURCAF is a Central American initiative. By having more limitations, we had only the Central American countries to meet every 2 years. I benefited when I was a student to go to these courses. SILAFA, this is a symposium, Latin American Symposium of High Energy Physics, that has been running for the last 20 something years, and is every 2 years in different country. And I think it shows that the community had been working together to keep some activity all together. Helen is a project that I like very much. It's called Helen because it's High Energy Latin American European Network. And it was led by Luciano Mayane, the former director of CERN. And they allow, it was a big project, like I don't know, I think it was like a 5 million euros funded by the European Union, and that allows scientists from Latin America to go to Europe, and many of them to CERN, and 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 that helped for these scientists to go back to their countries and create small groups that then became part of the different experiments at CERN. So some of the leading scientists at the moment that we see in Latin America, they came out from this program Helen, which I think was very good. It was followed up by ePlanet as a similar initiative, another five more years. But after that, the European Union stopped funding that kind of projects, and so it didn't continue. And then Leo Lederman, who was a Nobel Prize winner from Fermilab, also had his own program within Latin America in the United States for scientists to go to Fermilab. And then there was key experiments in Chacaltaya using the fact that the Bolivia is very high. There were some important experiments being done there in the last century. The Pierre I like that. I saw it at the beginning, more than 20 years ago. When I was in Argentina, there were this initiative being proposed, and then it was pleasant to see that even though Argentina had all these different problems, political problems, they managed to create a wonderful experiment. I went to the site a few years ago. It is impressive. It's the leading experiment worldwide for high energy cosmic rays. And we should be very proud that Latin Americans have been leading this. And of course, the observatories in Chile Chile is the best place in the world for astronomy observations, and they have been making a crucial contribution for the science in the world. And then there are other smaller collaborations, a project called LAGO, which is a network of small detectors that can be put in different mountains in Latin America, and so on. And I mentioned then now some recent developments. Something that happened in the last 15 years is I was actually very proud that we joined efforts with Nathan Berkowitz and Rogerio Rosenfeld to create this ICTP cipher. So ICTP, when I was the director, we decided to expand the mission of ICTP to have branches in key countries. And we started with Brazil and planning with Nathan Berkowitz. He was the leading figure there. And then we managed to create it with the support of the Brazilian government and with the support in particular with FAPESP. Brito, for instance, was a key person to support it. And now this center has been the hub for the scientists from all the region, Latin American, mostly South American, but all Latin America, to meet the top scientists in the world that come frequently to there to give lectures and conferences and schools and so on. So we created another one in Rwanda, another one in China, and another one in Mexico, in Chiapas. And there, unfortunately, the one in Chiapas, I think, will need much more support. So I urge our participants from Mexico, particularly the ambassador, if they can give us some support for this center in Chiapas that it has been created. It's a Category 2 institute of UNESCO, but it's lacking still the supporting funding from the local government, from the Chiapas and the university. So, but the one in Brazil played an important role. And then when we had the fifth anniversary of ICTP Cypher, we discussed what will be the next stage. And the next stage is something we call LASFRI, which is the Latin American Strategic Forum for Research Infrastructures. So essentially, we decided that, as it was mentioned in some of the presentations, we don't have a critical mass country by country, but altogether we have a real critical mass compared to Japan or compared even to China, and in the number of active scientists in high energy physics. And so altogether, we can actually do what the Europeans do and what the Americans do, is to plan ahead of what would be the research infrastructure that should be developed in the regions. And then, for instance, if we have Sirius in Brazil being a good synchrotron, we don't have to have another synchrotron in Argentina or nearby countries, but Argentina can do something else. And so there will be the scientists that more or less trying to work together and have a vision of what should be developed in the long term. And so we asked for support from the different governments. We gave a presentation to the meeting of Ibero-American Ministers of Science some 10 years ago, and then we have been reporting to them. And I will mention more about this. The outcome of this was to have first of all a white paper of many potential experiments, and then the creation of the Association from High Energy Physics that was created recently, and now the director actually is Rogerio Rosenfeld, who is presiding in ICTP Cypher. And different initiatives came out in the last few years, and mostly by young people, much younger than me, and part of this diaspora, people who had left Latin America and now are based in France and in CERN also, and they feel that we have to give back to our countries. And there are several initiatives. One is called La Conga Physics, a very complicated combination of names, but it's essentially it's a school that it was organized for 4 different countries, I think Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela. And it got the support of the European Union. So it was a master program from 8 universities in 4 different countries. And it was extremely successful. It covered not only high energy physics, but it developed also some experimental techniques and computational techniques. Now it has been just starting this month. We had this first meeting. Another initiative for the follow-up of the Congress called El Bongo, another combination of letters. And that includes not only high energy physics, but it includes also geophysics and artificial intelligence. Then LATAM is an initiative from a young Venezuelan student who's based in China, just to show the international aspects, with the support of ICTP to create a school courses for the region, and so on. There are several initiatives that the scientists from the region get together in collaborations and in conferences. This is the outcome of this last free document that was worked for several years, and they came out with a report. It is published. You can see the archive, and there are participants from many of the countries of Latin America. So it shows a real collaboration of the region. And these are the leaders of the group, but the contributors were, I would say, in the hundreds or so participants. This was mentioned. There was a special article in the Fermi Lab mentioning all the different experiments. You can see the different countries participating with experiments. With here the Sirius, this Hawk, and then the proposal Llama, and so on. There's Lago that I mentioned before, and so we had the dream with Andes that at that time was more optimistic about the potential tunnel that was going to be built between Argentina and Chile, but apparently that's not working very well. But if we had that, there would be a perfect place to have a real regional center for the whole Latin America, and the way that CERN is for Europe. And that would have been ideal, because that once you have a tunnel, it's a perfect place to have an underground detector for neutrino physics, dark matter, and many aspects. And here we see all the Sirius and so on. So this shows the different proposals that were summarized in that report. And now people are working in the second version of that. The goal of this is just to have projects and be ready to apply for funding and then get funding for mobility and so on, so that there will be collaboration among the countries. And here we can see the different ways that different countries have been collaborating in the different experiments, not only based in the region, but also with CERN and other international experiments. This is the association I told you. It was created, now it's funded now it has 26 members. The chair is Rogerio, and they're committed with people on the board from the different countries. So you can see there's a real collaboration among all the region. Okay, so now let me move to this analysis that I was promising at the beginning. So together with colleagues, students, and Diego Restrepo, who is a professor in Colombia, Mario Ramos, my student in Cambridge, and Manuel Morales, who is a professor, a postdoc in Italy. So we decided to have, in order to have actions about how to see for the future, it was important to have statistics about how many people are active, what are the countries that are doing more or less or so. And we realized that we didn't have a real quantitative information. So we decided to have a full analysis of publications and citations and so for scientists from all the region. We use, in that sense, Inspire, which is a database that has been there from the 1970s or so, that collects all the papers that have been coming out in the field for all these years. And we concentrate on publication with less than 10 authors, otherwise it will be diluted into big research experiments. And then we also use general information from United Nations and from the World Bank. And then we came out with this. So first we have this is the perspective Latin America in the region with the different countries, with the population, the percentage of GDP invested in science. As you can see, compared to other countries, we are lacking very much. And I think Brazil is the only one that goes beyond the 1%, but all the other countries were not doing very well. And this is an important thing to always emphasize because this is percentage of the GDP. There's no excuse that we are poor, so we cannot invest on that. So this is just a percentage of the GDP. So as long as we're investing less than the rich countries, it will be difficult for us to move on and be competitive. And okay, but still we have this productivity, so as I told you, from the 1950s evolving. And then this is the productivity of publications compared to the rest of the world. So in that sense, this is very important because this is increasing, steadily increasing, with something happened here that we don't understand yet, which right after the economic crisis in the 2008 or so. But overall, it has been increasing and is reaching to a kind of a plateau. It is positive because it is growing, but still is not increasing as much as it used to be. And the citations goes with a similar tendency, so this is good. And as I said, we are 8% of the population of the world, so should expect 8% of the productivity if the world will be uniform. And we are reaching 5%, which is not ideal, but it's not too bad. So in that sense, our scientists satisfy this standard claim that the talent is uniformly distributed worldwide, and the people who do more is because they have more opportunities. So we have less opportunities, but we're still doing a lot with the opportunities we have. And then we have the different authors and active authors. So we decided to define active authors, the ones who have publications in the last 5 years. And you can see that, of course, the numbers change a lot. Brazil is, of course, leading, but Argentina has a lot, of course. Then you can see Argentina and Colombia. Colombia has less than Argentina, even though the population of Colombia is higher than Argentina. So still, you can see some differences. And then for the total of authors and the total of active authors is reduced, of course. And we have the total of active authors per million inhabitants also reported here. And so some countries do much better than others. So usually Chile performs very well. Sorry. Publications, again, I will not bother you with too many tables, but this is publication per million inhabitants, publication by authors. Costa Rica in particular does well by percentage. Um, then let me see and compare different countries. We have compare, for instance, Argentina and Chile. And you can see how they have been evolving over the years. Argentina reached the plateau. Chile has been doing much better, better not only compared to Argentina, but compared to almost any other country. So in that sense, there's something that is happening in Chile that is positive that we have to acknowledge. And the publications follow a similar pattern. Citations, again, the similar pattern, citations per million people. The H index, the famous index, the number of is, H is you have H articles with more than H citations, and you can see in this case Uruguay does very well. Here, Dominican Republic does very well, but we started this case. It happened to be one single author that was very, very productive, and then he left the country. So this is not statistically significant. Whereas Costa Rica, I think, is significant, and which is good, and Uruguay is, you can see, is doing well. Then we have correlations with the investment in GDP in research and development. So we made a plot for the different countries, different colors, and you can see again Chile does very, 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 very well. And you can see the investment in Brazil outperforms everybody in terms of supporting of science, which I think we have to appreciate that. Then we have a similar plot with correlation with the Human Development Index. And so you have a similar development. You can see this more or less they fit into this straight line. Some countries are below and very few are above. And we thought that the correlation with HDI was probably more meaningful than correlation with respect to the GDP. That would be something to be discussed also. Here's the gender analysis. It's something we were particularly worried. One of the things that we used to say that is, well, uh, in Latin America, we don't have that much of a gender issue because we are all bad. We all have very low opportunities, so not only female but also male have. But that's not true. Actually, there is a real um, lack of a female fraction. For example, you're going to the 15%, which is very low, and it has not improved over the years. So the last 30 years is more or less the same. And probably more worrisome is that we also made a plot to analyze at the different stages of their career. And it's very troublesome that even though female scientists gets to the level of getting a permanent position in the university, which will be supposed to be very stable, even that still they don't continue in research and they drop. So essentially the situation gets worse with age, which it should not be the case. This was challenging to identify because we had to identify. There was a special code on the web that we were able to distinguish the gender of the authors. And in that sense, we had to use a small data set because only for the data set for which we had more than 90% confidence that we could identify the gender. And yet we got to this conclusion. So then we have collaborations within LA, which is important to see that the big countries have more collaboration with different countries. You can see the collaboration of Paraguay in particular is always 100% with with Argentina, which is very, very interesting. Then collaborations outside Latin America, so that we can see how much they collaborate with the United States, which is natural because it's nearby and it's bigger, but also with different countries in Europe. There's probably more collaboration with Italy, France, and Spain and Portugal compared to England, for instance. And that's something that probably can be explained because England put more emphasis on the former colonies and so. Uh, this is something we did recently, it's still we have to add to the original version of the paper. We have been trying to do this analysis because we think it's very important to analyze it, to extend it to all physics, to all science, and to all over the world, to all countries. And for that, we needed a good data set that we can trust. The one that we have been using is Inspire, which is very reliable, and because it has been collecting data for many, many, many years. Um, but there was not something so reliable for all sciences. But then we recently have been some new data sets emerging, and there's something called OpenAlex that covers 250 million papers, which is orders of magnitude more than what we were using with Inspire. And yet we managed to concentrate on OpenAlex that covers all science, to just concentrate on the ones that cover that fit in our field of high energy physics. And the good news is that they fit very well with the case that we have done with Inspire. So you can see essentially the trends are the same for different countries. So that means the lesson we learn from here is that we can actually use OpenAlex to extend our analysis to all sciences and to all over the world. So that's something that would be very good to do. And so let me just finish here. Conclusion, well, scientific productivity has increased in Latin America over 70 years, but the pace is slowing down, and it's important to keep up on that. There is a correlation, as I say, between productivity and the Human Development Index, probably better than with the GDP. Uh, the critical mass is in all the region by the number of active researchers is good. And I have to emphasize something probably is not mentioned very often, is that there is a real feeling of collaboration in the region. So Brazil, for instance, is very open to give fellowships to come to go to Brazil to do PhD in science for all the other students from Latin America. Mexico is also trying to do that with some fellowships from CONACYT. And Argentina at some point was starting to do something similar. And I think that that's very good. So smaller countries like my own country, Guatemala, but also even Peruvians or so, we have been profiting to go to get our PhDs and research to go to all these big countries. And that I think it shows that there is a real community feeling for the whole region, and it's worth exploring. And I think Claf is a key component on that. As I mentioned, the gender gap is worrisome, and it's worsening with higher ranks, which is a real worry. And international collaborations are key and need to be strengthened, not only within the region, but also with the region and the other countries. And that was one of the reasons we started with this project last spring. Future perspectives. Um, Usually the problem is sources of funding. So we take advantage of this different representatives of different countries that so far, many of these initiatives that we have developed have been like bottom up. We just try and get the scientists funded. We have projects and proposals for experiments, um, but we don't have full funding committed for, in particular, for mobility from one country to the other one. We got funding from ICTP for 10,000 just for mobility from one country to another one. Claf also gave us another 10,000 recently, which is we're very thankful for that. This Laconga was funded by the EU by 1 million euros for 5 years, which is very good. And El Bongo is on a similar amount, another 700,000 or so euros, which is very good. But we need sustainable sources of funding. We keep applying. Now we're applying to the Simon Foundation for a few $100,000, and we keep applying to different Canadian international cooperation. But it's important for us to be able to have funding guaranteed by our own countries. So in that sense, one of the concrete things that we can just request is to have particular funds allocated for mobility among all the countries. That's for instance, we had in the center of ICTP CIFER, the funding there is just to bring scientists to Brazil, but not to bring one person from Peru to go to Venezuela. So that kind of multinational agreement, it would be ideal to have a real regional collaborations. Then, as it has been mentioned by several, we have a stronger CERN connection. I think Salvatore will mention that later on. Brazil is a CERN member, which is good. Chile is almost essentially on the way to be an associated member of CERN. And then there are many scientists from Latin America being participating in CERN. I was recently in the Geneva because we had the Secretary of Science in Guatemala signing an agreement with CERN again for having bringing Guatemalan scientists there, and it was mentioned by the ambassador in Costa Rica. Costa Rica had already uh, one scientist physically there, and then with a group that of visitors that come once in a while from Costa Rica, and that I think is very good. And actually, we're starting actually a Central American collaboration because it so happens that there is an Honduras scientist who was educated in Brazil, a member of LACB, one of the experiments at CERN. Now she's in Honduras, and she's still a member of the collaboration. It happens to be the same collaboration that the Costa Rican and the Guatemalans are going to join. So in that sense, there's a real a group, Central American group, to be part of CERN, a CERN experiment and work together. As I said, well, a regional Latin American laboratory, that was a dream, and I think Andes may be still a long term, but it never stops us from dreaming. And one thing that was mentioned already is this joint PhD programs that I think it will be very, very useful because it's important for our countries to send students for other countries, which is good, but every country has to have their own PhD programs because the research is mostly done in any institution, is mostly done by the PhD students. So we send all the students abroad. Then there's little possibility for having research in our own countries, in particular the smaller countries. So joint PhD programs can be ideal for that. So I'll finish with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando, very much for this very detailed presentation of the state of high energy physics and all the statistics that show how collaboration is shaping in the continent.